Is Wolverine a better character than Spider-Man? Now I know that question may be unpopular given the majority viewpoint held by most Marvel fans, as can be seen in my recent YouTube poll, but the recent Deadpool and Wolverine movie really had me thinking about it. It was a great movie that had enough deep themes going for it that was honestly mostly carried by Wolverine. Not too many cons I can pick with it apart from a few minor plot holes that could be found, and me not liking how a relationship was handled, but I would call it a very solid movie that I personally thought was possibly better than every Spider-Man movie outside of Sam Raimi's. Wolverine had a big part in that, and I would say that Wolverine has more quality consistency than Spider-Man has had in the recent years especially. We aren't even going to count comics though, as every single character suffers from modern comics like Spidey getting cucked, and Wolverine being in a bisexual relationship with Cyclops and Jean Grey. But anyway, unlike Spider-Man, Wolverine hasn't really had a huge divisive piece of media at all, apart from maybe his solo movies, and even then, that Outworld was mostly just dumb critics pushing out some grifting narrative that the normal moviegoer or open-minded person doesn't really think about, similar to the dookie criticism Spider-Man 3 got. Then we have Spider-Man, where people basically didn't take a liking to his TV shows that came out after Spectacular Spider-Man, more so the most recent show of his, as opposed to Wolverine or the X-Men, where I haven't really seen them churn out a show that fans disliked as much as those other Spidey shows. I'll circle back to media later, but it sort of comes down to how these characters behave as a whole and what they represent. Wolverine, more so than any other superhero character, represents pure, peak, Western masculinity in all of its strengths and hobbies. A buff, hairy gigachad who works hard and kicks ass. He doesn't take shit from anyone. He served in the military for World War I and II and many more, and even fought alongside Captain America. He smokes, drinks, and spends a decent amount of time in the bar. He drives motorcycles and walks away from explosions behind him. A man who's been through trials and tribulations but still ends up doing the right thing while making sure his killer urges don't kill the innocent. That is some Giga Chad shit right there. Even other masculine superhero characters I may like as much or more don't hit all of these boxes, such as Captain America and Batman, who carry themselves in a more cleanly manner than Wolverine's, since those characters don't really engage in pleasures like going to the bar. But then there's Spider-Man, who doesn't represent that type of masculinity. Spider-Man represents a man shaping up into the man he's supposed to be. We see him grow up through the older 90s comics, the 90s TV series, or the Raimi trilogy, as opposed to characters like Wolverine and Batman, who we often get introduced to when they are already grown, especially in the case of Wolverine where he's over 200 years old, or his younger scenes in his Origins movie not taking up too much screen time. That differing form of masculinity wasn't a problem for Spider-Man, as it's great in its own way, but nowadays with his declining media, it sorta becomes a problem as Spider-Man doesn't get to grow as much these days, in tandem with him now becoming a socio-political propaganda tool that is taken advantage of, given that he's the most successful character when it comes to a younger audience. His INSOYMNIAC games have been riddled with pride flags, which is minor enough to look past until Spider-Man 2 multiplied the flags by 5 in tandem with sexuality bending Black Cat with the shitty excuse of one comic written by Cryboy Kevin Smith that didn't do well, Latinx pronouns that only 3% of Hispanics fuck with, and a gay side mission where your kid is forced to watch a gay kid ask out another gay kid if he wants the Puerto Rico milestone and 100% completion. Puerto Rico is a pretty Christian area too, which makes this really fucked up how INSOYMNIAC has no respect for other cultures. They just pretend to care given what I've just said in tandem with them getting the Puerto Rico flag mixed up with Cuba. I myself could have made that mistake, but I'm not an expensive AAA studio. I gave this shitty game 2 videos on the subject, by the way. It doesn't stop there though, although I wouldn't call this movie bad overall, unlike INSOYMNIAC Spider-Man 2, but we have the second Spider-Verse movie. This detail is admittedly subtle enough to miss, but it's horrible enough to condemn regardless. A trans flag in Gwen Stacy's room that says, "Protect trans kids." I'll emphasize, trans kids, which pretty much represents the indoctrination of children who would normally never make such a decision without outside influence, or in an even worse scenario where children get irreversibly damaged by hormone blockers and possibly getting certain body parts cut off. That shit is what trans means, and they put the name of it beside the word kids in a movie that will have a large percentage of younger viewers. Anyone who argues against this being wrong should dress in all gray and then fall asleep on the road on the busiest highway. Those morons can have fun arguing with the fact that these pieces of media get heavily censored or banned in various countries that still have their morals intact. Spider-Verse 2 got banned and the so-called virtuous Insomniacs removed their flags in all their games for a Middle East release, and in the shitshow story of the second Spider-Man game, they had to remove a whole mission, a black cat line, and a whole slew of crap that probably nearly made up to 20% of the game made for children. So you fake woke motherfuckers who pretend to like other cultures can sit with the fact that those other countries outside of western shit shows like the United States, Canada, and the UK don't really fuck with the LGBTP crap you cucks like to religiously defend. In some way, I can even say that these losers who defend this shit while condemning others for being critical of it are racist or anti-theist, given the fact that no other religion officially fucks with this shit, or various other mostly non-white countries or areas, like nearly all of Arab culture and the continent of Africa as a general whole, as it's often outlawed there, or even frowned upon in other countries like China, etc. These losers are too irredeemably fucking stupid and stubborn to comprehend the fact that they're a victim of first world indoctrination, even in the face of the facts that people generally don't behave like this outside of these three countries. You'll rarely catch anyone saying crap like trans women are real women with one of these non-first world accents. Okay, I rambled a little, but as valid as those complaints of mine are, my point in saying this is that Wolverine or the X-Men doesn't have any form of media that had to be banned or heavily censored in other countries that preserve their traditional morals outside of Deadpool being banned in China for rated R brutality reasons. As said before, we aren't counting modern shitshow comics since every hero goes to crap in modern comics. In terms of the X-Men, the closest thing I can think of in terms of socio-political nonsense is one silly line in X-Men Dark Phoenix about how the X-Men should be called X-Women, or one fairly missable fact in the new show X-Men 97 where Morph is apparently non-binary. But despite that objectively being a confirmed case by the writers, I didn't really notice it too badly, as the time they referred to him as a they or them sort of went over my head. I guess he behaves a little zesty, but it got a slight chuckle out of me as opposed to all the crap in Spider-Man 2 that's far too blunt to miss, like Black Cat's girlfriend, which nobody missed, or this entire wall, or this entire mission. What I just listed off was the worst thing I could name for the X-Men, and it wasn't even that horrible, as it's a solid show actually. So I guess I'll state that Wolverine and the X-Men just have better quality consistency, even if I would personally say that Spider-Man has better highs, such as his Activision games like Web of Shadows, or the Raimi movies. Wolverine and the X-Men also seem to preserve their characters more when it comes to the source material. It rarely deviates too heavily. Wolverine's origin story stays fairly consistent across all his media. I know people bitch at the Fox X-Men movies for straying from the source material, whether it be minor things like the costumes being mostly black, which I think was excusable for the tone of those movies. It's good to see the yellow suit, but it probably works just because of the Deadpool movies not being too serious in their comedic tones. But yeah, nothing I could think of that 180s their source material too much. I guess you can say the Phoenix from X-Men 3, but I've seen bigger 180s from various MCU examples. Hell, the one and only big 180 of Fox was their first version of Deadpool, but even then, I wouldn't call that as drastic of a 180 when up against Spider-Man examples, whether it be Tom Holland's movies where Iron Man gets involved in Peter's life, which never really happened before, along with Spidey's villains having something to do with Iron Man, or an even worse Spidey example with Insomniac Spider-Man The original Fox Deadpool was at least a skilled mercenary named Wade Wilson who had a bit of wit and humor to him, and would never shut up before he was experimented on by the Weapon X program, as opposed to Insomniac, Venom, and Scream, who have nothing to do with their original counterparts at all outside of their appearance. Like Eddie Brock Venom, who originally wanted to make Peter's life a living hell, instead of Insomniac Venom being Harry Osborn, who wants to work with Spider-Man to infect the entire world. Yeah, nothing in common at all in tandem with Harry being Venom instead of Eddie Brock, which never happened apart from some mid-received cartoon. Congrats Insomniac, you're not comic accurate, but you're cartoon accurate to a Spidey show that most people don't have as their favorite Spidey show. And then there's Scream, who is Mary Jane instead of Donna Diego. Don't even get me started on Mary Jane being a journalist Lois Lane ripoff who performs like a military soldier. Fox Deadpool may be a drastic 180, but even he has a better point-form list of being similar to his comics than both of these symbiote characters, where any point you could come up with would be a further stretch. I have a full video on this subject, by the way. And finally, there's fan bases. With Wolverine and the X-Men, I've noticed that their fans seem to have higher odds of just being normal sane people or gigachats of masculinity who don't believe that there's multiple genders beyond two. And then there's the modern Spider-Man fanbase who are just special needs for all the reasons others don't have the balls to call out. You have a bunch of cope drones that somehow defend all this progressive crap being jammed into a fairly kid-associated brand like Spider-Man by defending a trans kid flag being in a Spider-Man movie. In my video calling it out, I got some cope drones trying to excuse it by saying, oh, it means trans teens, when you can clearly read that the sign says kids. Or the Insomniac drones, who are even worse, as the game Spider-Man 2 is probably the biggest example of progressive nonsense being put in a video game ever. And you had a bunch of zesty first world drones defending a game that forces your kids to see a gay kid ask out another gay kid, and a bunch of other crap as mentioned before. Believe me when I tell you that I'm doing you all a favor by not showing off some of my SPED comments I get on a weekly or daily basis, but there's been an insane correlation between dumb take comments and Insomniac profile pics, and even Spider-Verse profile pics at times. Just fugly as fuck chronically online losers, and you can go into the comments section of my various Insomniac Spidey videos, where you can see hundreds of them. I am literally a search result because of roasting this shit, where I have people looking for my videos to disagree with them. Oh, and believe me, this even spills into the inbred byproduct Insomniac shill content creators who were brought up in a short bus. Just to name one, you have Collins getting on the case of the amazing Lucas because he didn't give Spider-Man 2 a 9. I have around 10 videos and multiple posts on me, and I'm not even a 1K sub channel yet. The first response video came from a guy who sounds like his balls didn't fully drop yet. I didn't even entertain fully watching a second one, or most of the others, from someone even worse, like some fugly as fuck, obsessive, column grifting gremlin with 7 videos on me. That cannot even be given the name response video due to the ridiculous amount of context which was either cut or misrepresented. But after all, what do you expect from some pasty, balding in his 20 Arkham City Joker hairline motherfucker who comes from a country with such a bloody racist colonist history, still managing to have the gall to call me racist against my own ethnicity of black women? Oh, or looking at my best bud Resikin, who's openly arid, who elaborated on how we were against Western supremacism, but what does he do? Entirely cut out the segment and lie to his much larger audience of what's probably mostly dumb kids, telling them that we were the Western supremacists when we've done nothing but roast the West and his UK shitshow for having all of these LGBTP issues, which he does nothing but defend and call any opposing views, which are held by the majority of the world, mind you, as backwards, making him inherently a Western supremacist.
Oh, there's no surprise there, especially considering how they try to enforce the Latinx label on Latinos despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of them oppose it. This type of telling others what's good for them rhetoric is what I like to call the Western supremacist mentality. It's one that assumes that other cultures built up off of centuries of history and common practices are all backwards and primitive for not submitting to the new normal, which really only started becoming that in the last few decades or so. What exactly gives the West the ability to decide on what's right and what's wrong? What should be normalized and what shouldn't be? African countries, for example, being threatened with sanctions that lead to poverty for simply refusing to comply with this new normal on a governmental level is beyond barbaric.
And it wasn't just Western supremacists either, which he tried to project on us. This is a man-child who threw every label he could, like anti-Ukraine against me, when there's no soundbite of me even mentioning Ukraine. He hilariously failed to get us banned when he tried to call upon his child's audience to report us via 3 community posts in a row, all over his virgin pussy getting sore over negative takes on his precious INSOYMNIAC Spider-Man game. You can't make this shit up. As said before, these people can only be dealt with like this.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill.
But yeah, all the content creators beyond the worst one I just delved into just make up strawmans and get on people's case for not giving games 9s regardless of the subjective or objective criticisms. One of the videos on me is a debunking of a still positively scored 7 out of 10 review on Spider-Man PS4, which objectively goes against the definition of debunking, since a review is a subjective thing that can't really be debunked unless the reviewer gets some detail extremely wrong, which very rarely happens outside of that cosmonaut cuck. It's not really an opinion that INSOYMNIAC Spider-Man is the only game that has stuff that tells you if it's safe or unsafe to take out a thug. INSOYMNIAC having slower swinging speeds than past Spidey games isn't an opinion either. Miles per hour isn't an opinion. Hell, I can even call skill ceiling an objective, given the fact that you can move throughout the whole city in INSOYMNIAC when just permanently holding the right trigger down while moving the stick forward, while other Spidey games don't reward this minimalist input when they don't let you move more than 15 meters doing that, etc. These people just love to try to misuse the word opinion, because they aren't mature enough to articulate themselves anywhere close to moderately. But anyway, enough of the pitiful worms that I should have left far beneath my notice, but the point is the X-Men and other superhero brands don't have it this bad. I got into beef before by calling Robert Pattinson's Batman a mid-movie in comparison to Snyder's Batman's deep themes of him being a Batman that was pushed to the limits and stopped pulling his punches against a city that never changes. And sure, I got blowback from my deep truths, but I never got as much SPED shit as I did with Spider-Man. With that being said, if you're a modern Spider-Man fan, then I regret to inform you that you're more likely to be stupid, fugly as fuck, or gay. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Don't look at me, I'm just the messenger. Wolverine and his fan base clearly has a better track record when looking at the modern day especially. X-Men fans have actually been eating good with solid media like Xmen 97 and Wolverine and a few other cameos within Deadpool 3. But I will say that the hot streak is likely to end when INSOYMNIAC gets their dirty, zesty fingers on Wolverine with another video game, according to this comment from one of my most solid fans, which reports that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman had to fight to make that movie great. And I don't doubt that being the case given the recent Marvel track record and all the jabs towards Kevin Feige and Disney within the movie. So God knows this game will somehow find a way to emasculate Wolverine like they did with Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2, where Peter doesn't have a 1v1 win against the main character when without the help of Miles or the Black Suit in that zesty game for unconscious losers. I made a video on this, but they already made a woman uglier than they're already in practically ugly MJ. The story of INSOYMNIAC Spidey declined with that face downgrade, so God knows this game will follow suit and be inferior to the past Wolverine games, just like INSOYMNIAC Spider-Man. Anyway, that's enough yapping. In terms of quality consistency and non-degenerate media, Wolverine wins. Check out my Discord if you want to talk to worthy minds, or check out my other Wolverine or Spider-Man videos I made recently, or check out my videos of Restikin and I wasting our time responding to zesty ugly losers. Thanks for watching.